We are again on the line from Eva Florence, and I have the pleasure to ask to Dr. Cristina Cidini, past superintendent of Polo Museale di Firenze, to say some words on art. Cristina, ci sei? Cristina? I don't know if she is connected. I was thinking so. Cristina, ci sei? Mi sembra che non sia collegata. Vabbè, proviamo, intanto cominciamo. We start the session 3 with the chairman Enrico Del Re, and we have the first e poi proviamo di nuovo. We try again with Cristina Cidini.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. We start the afternoon session, but in the first first presentation of this session is the last one not given in the morning session on session 2. So I ask one of the authors, Benelli, Parrino, Pozzebon, to present his contribution, which is titled The Farfalla Project, Mobile Devices for Traditional Agriculture. After this, we start with session 3. Thank you. Pozzebon is online. Someone of the author Benelli, Parrino, or Pozzebon are online? No one? Okay. Now we start effectively with the session 3, New Technical Developments and Applications, and the first paper is titled The Spirit of the Cloud, a Virtual Experience as a Manifestation of the New Jerusalem. And the authors are Moshe Kane and Doron Altaratz, by Jerusalem in Israel. Please, you have the floor.
Moshe, please use the microphone.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well. And let me thank Vito. And it's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces, albeit virtually. Hopefully,
you are not looking at your presentation, unfortunately. Try to start it again.
I will start my presentation. Seeing as how we're all very limited in time, I chose to pre-record my presentation so as not to overrun the goodwill of the people in charge. So without further ado, I will hopefully present. Please let me know if there's a problem.
Okay, that's fine.
Experience a personal spiritual event through the use of digital imaging technology, specifically that of virtual reality. We examine this question with reference to two communities who have migrated from their homes and cultures, who live today in the modern city of Jerusalem, yet still yearn for their former life and try to fulfill the ideal known today as the New Jerusalem. The relationship between technology and the user may be seen in the context of the philosophical dilemma of mind and body, that is, how the physical and technological process may affect emotion and subjective experience. This project tries to bridge the gap by offering a personal encounter, born of technology, one which elevates the user to a personal spiritual journey. The Spirit of the Cloud aims to function on 3 levels: conceptual, social, and technological. On a conceptual level, as stated, the ambition is to create an emotional experience and to examine in a new light the idea of the virtual pilgrimage. What is this idea? For generations, the question has arisen of the necessity of being physically present within the pilgrimage journey which leads to spiritual transcendence. As early as 1480, the Dominican preacher Felix Fabry wrote a devotional book for his followers to experience a mental pilgrimage from the confines of their cloisters. In recent years, with the dominance of the digital world and the internet, this question has grown stronger. Websites are appearing worldwide, offering a digital alternative to the religious experience. And it highlights the question, is it possible that arriving, that is, reaching a spiritual plateau does not necessarily involve a physical journey at all, but that it is rather an internal experience? This is the idea of the New Jerusalem. We first meet this concept in Ezekiel's prophetic vision of Jerusalem, the capital of the Messianic kingdom. The utopian idea also appears in the New Testament and is deeply rooted in the pilgrimage ceremony, and later, when churches were built throughout Europe, it served as a spiritual substitute for Jerusalem. These places describe an ideal rather than a real place, a utopia. We find this expression of a utopian city in literature, poetry, and art, such as in Thomas More's Utopia, and the wonderful description of the invisible cities by Italo Calvino. The New Jerusalem is central to many pilgrimage rites, not just to Jerusalem, but to any place that has acquired that degree of holiness. William Blake's poem, Jerusalem, is now recognized as England's unofficial anthem and is even played at major sporting events, as well as at the conclusion of the annual music festival, the Proms. On a practical level, this project chooses to engage the question by exploring 2 very different, historically related structures: the Synagogue of Yad Veneto, Italy, and the Kidane Meret Ethiopian Church. Both are located today in the new city of Jerusalem, close to our own Hadassah College. Both are manifestations of the resurrection of the old world, here and now. And both are expressions of a reality that is suspended between 2 worlds. Now, one cannot fully understand the relevance of these structures without delving into a very brief historical overview of modern Jerusalem. The second half of the 19th century was marked by a rapid growth of the city. This reflects a growth in its importance, not only for its Jewish and Muslim population, but also for the Christian world. The rising popularity of archaeology, photography, and anthropology found a fertile ground in the Holy Land in general, and in Jerusalem in particular. The exploration of 19th century Jerusalem yielded a wealth of information.
Excuse me, Moshe, excuse me. To better see your presentation, it's necessary that you show only the presentation, not the display. The display. Otherwise, the system repeat infinitely the display many times. So only the presentation, please.
I'm only showing the presentation.
I think Andreas Bernhardt is presenting for some reason. If he can disable.
I've got only my presentation on the screen, nothing else.
The presentation, yes. You speak while the presentation, you present the presentation.
I'm not speaking at all.
I see continuously my presentation, Andreas Bienert, my presentation in different and multiplied windows, but I don't know why.
And Andreas Bernhardt seems to have selected presenting now on my screen.
Yes, I think that's the problem.
Whereas it isn't presenting on my screen.
Andreas, if you could unpresent.
Can you
But
unpresent?
how can I change it?
And I can continue presenting.
Or can you represent?
Whatever.
That's
I
better.
don't know when things started getting corrupt. I can go back a couple of minutes if you wish.
Yes, I think you need to restart presenting.
Okay, shall do. Do let me know if there's a problem, please.
This project examines the question of our ability to experience
You're not presenting. You haven't selected presenting, Moshe.
I am.
that of virtual
1 minute. Let's do this all from the beginning. Let's do this all from the beginning. Okay. I hope all is well. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
And hopefully you can hear it. All right. Third time lucky.
This project examines the question of our ability to experience a personal spiritual event through the use of digital imaging technology, specifically that of virtual reality. We examine this question with reference to two communities who have migrated from their homes and cultures, who live today in the modern city of Jerusalem, yet still yearn for their former life and try to fulfill the ideal known today as the New Jerusalem. The relationship between technology and the user may be seen in the context of the philosophical dilemma of mind and body, that is, how the physical and technological process may affect emotion and subjective experience. This project tries to bridge the gap by offering a personal encounter born of technology, one which elevates the user to a personal spiritual journey. The Spirit of the Cloud aims to function on three levels: conceptual, social, and technological. On a conceptual level, as stated, the ambition is to create an emotional experience and to examine in a new light the idea of the virtual pilgrimage. What is this idea? For generations, the question has arisen of the necessity of being physically present within the pilgrimage journey which leads to spiritual transcendence. As early as 1480, the Dominican preacher Felix Fabry wrote a devotional book for his followers to experience a mental pilgrimage from the confines of their cloisters. In recent years, with the dominance of the digital world and the internet, this question has grown stronger. Websites are appearing worldwide, offering a digital alternative to the religious experience. And it highlights the question: is it possible that arriving, that is, reaching a spiritual plateau does not necessarily involve a physical journey at all, but that it is rather an internal experience? This is the idea of the New Jerusalem. We first meet this concept in Ezekiel's prophetic vision of Jerusalem, the capital of the Messianic kingdom. The utopian idea also appears in the New Testament and is deeply rooted in the pilgrimage ceremony, and later, when churches were built throughout Europe, served as a spiritual substitute for Jerusalem. These places describe an ideal rather than a real place, a utopia. We find this expression of a utopian city in literature, poetry, and art, such as in Thomas More's Utopia and the wonderful description of the invisible cities by Italo Calvino. The New Jerusalem is central to many pilgrimage rites, not just to Jerusalem, but to any place that has acquired that degree of holiness. William Blake's poem, Jerusalem, is now recognized as England's unofficial anthem and is even played at major sporting events, as well as at the conclusion of the annual music festival, the Proms. On a practical level, this project chooses to engage the question by exploring two very different yet historically related structures: the Synagogue of Corneliano Veneto, Italy, and the Kidane Meret Ethiopian Church. Both are located today in the new city of Jerusalem, close to our own Hadassah College, Both are manifestations of the resurrection of the old world, here and now, and both are expressions of a reality that is suspended between two worlds. Now, one cannot fully understand the relevance of these structures without delving into a very brief historical overview of modern Jerusalem. The second half of the 19th century was marked by a rapid growth of the city. This reflects a growth in its importance, not only for its Jewish and Muslim population, but also for the Christian world. The rising popularity of archaeology, photography, and anthropology found a fertile ground in the Holy Land in general, and in Jerusalem in particular. The exploration of 19th century Jerusalem yielded a wealth of information and literature, which did much to arouse Western interest in the city. Thus, we see a sharp increase in religious activity in Jerusalem. The Latin Patriarch, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, the Russian Compound, the Anglicans, the German Catholic Compound, etc., etc. This period also witnessed the development of the Ethiopian Orthodox community in Jerusalem. In 1888, the Ethiopian Emperor Johannes bought a plot of land and began construction of a new church, compound, and monastery for his growing community. However, as is so often the case in Jerusalem, religion, history, geography, and politics are closely intertwined, and so an event thousands of kilometers from Jerusalem, in a small town called Conegliano Veneto in Italy, unfolded, sending ripples across the ocean. Jews had lived in Conegliano from the 16th century. Over the generations, the community diminished. The synagogue remained in sporadic use until World War I. The last prayer was held on Yom Kippur 1919 by Jewish soldiers from the Austro-Hungarian army. In 1944, when the last members of the community died, the community itself ceased to exist. However, shortly after the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, the synagogue was moved in its entirety to Jerusalem, where the original hall was restored in all its detail and erected in no other than the former Catholic hospice. Today, it is in constant use by the Italian community in Jerusalem. As stated earlier, this project raises the question of our ability to experience a spiritual event through digital imaging technology, specifically that of virtual reality. Let us keep in mind, however, that with all its centrality, technology is nothing but a means and not an end in itself. So with this in mind, our project focuses on two technologies, the point cloud and the virtual reality system. From the outset, the word cloud in itself has a religious connotation. According to the Bible, the pillar of cloud was one of the manifestations of the presence of God, which accompanied the Israelites on their journeys in the wilderness. In our digital world today, the cloud is that endless repository of data and information. But here we have chosen to emphasize another cloud, the digital point cloud, the foundation of 3D computer space. The digital image, as we know, is but a collection of data points that are expressed as physical points of light or color in two-dimensional space. In the three-dimensional world, however, we are also required to give information about the point's location on the z-axis, its distance from the camera or the eye. We do this by a process called triangulation and a technique called photogrammetry. This is not a new process at all, but nowadays it's achieved by photographing or by scanning each point in space from at least 2 or 3 different angles. For this project, we used both conventional photogrammetry and advanced laser scanning to produce 3D point clouds of both structures. For the most part in 3D imaging, the collection of points, the point cloud, constitute but an interim stage in the creation of a photorealistic model. In our case, however, we chose to focus on the points themselves as the basis for our research. Why? The unique quality of the point cloud is central to creating the experience of a mystical journey. Like a cluster of locusts in the sky, the cloud is measured by its density, by the distance between the dots. The denser the dots, the more seemingly opaque the scene. The sparser the dots, the more transparent. Likewise, the apparent density of the cloud will be relative to the distance from which it is viewed. As we approach the cloud, the distance between the dots will grow, and vice versa, as it recedes into the distance. Because a point cloud is entirely mathematical, we may change our viewpoint at will and travel through the clouds like a bird or a plane. Unlike a standard 3D structure, the walls are never fully solid. Ceilings and floors no longer constrain our path of flight, and space assumes a dreamlike quality, a form of dynamic pointillism. Thus, by allowing the viewer to immerse in a virtual reality, we wish to create an emotional experience, a virtual pilgrimage. In practice, however, there is considerable difficulty in the application of a point cloud for an interactive digital journey. This is due to the huge data load it imposes on the processors for real-time interactive experience. We are therefore currently testing various file optimization methods as well as game engine platforms to balance the desired requirements of performance and the limitations of technology.
Can you please go towards the conclusion, please?
Yeah.
The spiritual experience lies in the fact that it is at once both intrinsically, profoundly personal and inward-looking, yet at the same time it is also a communal, shared experience, and the emotional impact is elevated by its togetherness. This is relevant to the VR experience, which locks out the external world it contains. Is this good or bad? This also is the question of how, where, and when the VR experience can or should be applied. In the user's private domain or in public spaces such as churches. Could VR installations on site possibly become virtual cloisters of seclusion and introspection? Finally, the experience of the past few months has put a new perspective on this work. The virtual pilgrimage is now no longer just a choice, but rather a necessity. Several months ago, at the start of this project, the distance between Jerusalem and Florence was just a journey of several hours. This afternoon, however, the chasm seems unbridgeable, and it is only thanks to the long arm of digital technology that we can at least reach out to each other and join in a communal experience.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I ask to Cristina Cidini if he is online to give a short message. Cristina, you are there? Cristina? You feel us? Cristina Cidini? Can you speak a little? Cristina? I try last.
Yes.
Last tentative. I call directly. Parla, guarda, ti collego e non si vede la tua immagine. Parla ora in inglese, così ti sentono tutti dal mondo, vai.
No, aspetta, mi collego, basta sapere quando.
Ah, se ti colleghi meglio.
Just a moment, because we have tentative for a new connection.
With Cristina Cidini, she's the past superintendent of all museums in Florence, Uffizi, Galleria, insomma, all the museum, 24. So if she can say a few words, is art for us in Florence, in Tuscany, in some way, the most important person. Ci sei? Cristina? Capisco, dice che si connette, ma... I don't know what happens. Vediamo un po'. We have a dynamic approach, as you know. Is experiment. Our IVA is anytime experiment. No, sei già attivata.
Il microfono.
Te l'ho già attivato, non posso fare più di questo. Sei già attivata. Guarda, non posso, se tu parli però in inglese, ti sente tutto il mondo. Ti collego io con il microfono e sei attivato, che ti devo dire? Purtroppo c'è il sistema ha le sue... Puoi parlare un po', 5 minuti, 2 minuti, 3 in inglese? Pronto?
Il microfono lo deve attivare la cabina di regia.
La cabina di regia, scusa Alessandro, vieni qua, dice non è attivato il microfono della Cristina Cidini, ma non è che si deve attivare noi, lo devi attivare te. Aspetta, ti passo un momento il tecnico e diciamo noi abbiamo attivato tutto, guarda un pochino se tu puoi attivare qualcosa te, dice che aspetta di essere attivata, ma non credo che sia il nostro. Stiamo provando di fare quello che possiamo, perché comunque aspetta un attimo che mentre c'è il nostro esperto cerca di collegarsi andiamo avanti ancora 5-10 minuti, vediamo se ce la facciamo, se no se vuoi parlare in inglese ti sentono tutti tramite questo mio link. Pronto?
È attivato? Pronto, mi senti?
Sì, ecco, vai. È apparsa e è
senti
sparita.
ora? Il microfono è attivato.
Vai, tu puoi parlare.
Il microfono è attivo.
No, ti sentiamo,
No,
vai.
Va bene,
Puoi parlare.
Bene. Thank you, Vito, for inviting me to this new chance to meet with Eva. So many interesting researchers and participants in the worldwide net of digital advancement and progress. What I want to say is just a few words as a temporary consideration on what we have been going through and what we are still going through. The pandemic experience that touched all of us and all the world. What I mean is that the importance and the crucial role of the digital technologies for researchers, art historians, art lovers, and potential visitors of the museum that are still rarely open, it has been invaluable. We experience something that we have been discussing about for years and years, whether the digital world is equivalent to the physical world or even better. And you know that I was always on the side of the real things, being responsible of museums and works of art. But that said, I myself realized how rich, how deep, how vital in a way the digital world might be when you're confined, when you cannot get a free access to libraries or other sources of knowledge, or and to the vast world of images. So I experienced this also in a very special occasion that I was appointed to write a book on Raphael exactly at the eve of the lockdown, what we call lockdown in Italy, the isolation of every single family or individual. And I was forced somehow to take advantage of the book that I had, but at the same time to explore the web in every possible, along every possible path. And I experienced with the greatest advantage that the major museums or exhibition halls share their contents and images online very generously, very friendly and openly. And entire exhibitions were visible thanks to virtual tours. We may quote, for example, the most important Italian exhibition of Raphael this year, the Scuderia del Quirinale, but also an excellent exhibition in Washington, D.C., the National Gallery of Art, that was open and then closed after a few days. And it was and is still visible in a perfect way and with a great effectiveness, thanks to the virtual tour that have been quickly and wisely organized by the responsible. So what I want to say is that now we all hope to go back to a certain normal way of life. But that said, a major progress has been experienced and achieved and really obtained in this field for the arts. And I suggest that we develop further technologies that may help and support in remote all the researchers that are now and probably for months doable with a great difficulty. So thank you to all who made possible such an opportune and useful device. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Cristina. I think you gave a big contribution to our work. Thank you very much. I telephone you tomorrow. Ciao.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we go on with the second presentation of session 3, titled Based on Trust, Cultural Heritage and Virtual Representations. And the author is Andreas Bienert from Berlin, Germany. Please, floor is yours.
Hello to everybody. And first of all, I have to give my thanks to the chairman, Vito Capellini and Enrico Del Re. And I'm really glad to have been invited and to use this platform for putting forward my ideas on museums and digitalization in these difficult times. I'm very glad to see directly on my screen Jim Hemsley, the Spiritus Rector of EVA conferences, and I'm very sure he has foreseen 30 years ago maybe that EVA conferences will become kind of mobile digital platform for our collective pilgrimage to the roots of technology and digital culture. Thank you, Jim, for everything in the last 30 years. In my short presentation, which is more or less not a presentation because I have no images to put forward, I follow in a way the ideas of Moshe Kain, in the way that I deal with the problem of multiplying uniqueness and to generate what we call credibility. Is there a future for museums? And how will it be designed? With the pandemic crisis of social conduct and the temporary closure of museums, questions are coming to the fore that have been asked for a long time, but whose answers have never been more urgent than today. We are really witnessing the transformation of the beloved brick and mortar museums into more or less mobile media platforms that still open up the inaccessible collection depots via 724 portals and put forward grandiose exhibitions and grandiose experiences to a global public online. It is a quarter of a century after the proclamation of the information superhighway by Al Gore that digitalization of museums is taking on stronger contours in the corona-related digital spring, as we call it in Germany. Collecting, preserving, researching, and communicating these almost time-honored terms from the Arcadia of ICOM are being shifted to virtual spaces and likely replaced by the terms access, sharing, participation, and visualization. But up to now, digital media in museums have preferably been regarded as an instrumental means for preparing or following up a visit to a museum as a supplementary and in-depth visitor information during a visit, and at best as a helpful, if only moderately appreciated, surrogate of the indispensable way of looking directly to the original piece of art in an exhibition. So not until the crisis, virtual museums emancipate themselves today and develop very independent ways of addressing the audience and of interact with the visitors. Beyond its instrumental values, this is as a pure information carrier, it now claims a share in the intrinsic values of the original art spaces and the sentimental experience of the aura and the here and now of the physical museums. The visit in the museum and the visit in the digital museum merge into an equivalent experience. As the German television ZDF turns it on its website advertising the Digitale Kunsthalle, visit exhibitions without having to go to a museum. However, doubts about the fulfillment of this postulate are justified. The material evidence of the collections often resists any exchange into digital equivalents. Museums, libraries, archives, and concert halls unfold their repertoires through the real presence of things and the immediacy of physical sensory perception. As teddy bears of our post-factual era, as the philosopher Odo Marquardt has pointed out, they convey to the visitors something about credibility, uniqueness, and the special taste of material culture in an increasingly immaterial world. And still today, credibility is a very, very fragile construct in digital media. Algorithms can be manipulated easily and unnoticed. The lack of trustworthy validation strategies reduces the interpretability of the digital replicas and leads to fake and history fiction. Reliable statements about the conformity of the original artifact and its digital versioning often depend on more or less appearance. On the internet, nobody knows you are a dog, is the popular description of this dilemma. While the analog world of collections and museums does not shy away from an exorbitant effort to carry out quality control, prevent forgery, or guarantee the preservation of the collection, the digital universe does still today not devote sufficient care to data integrity, identity, and authenticity of the collection's objects. In web projects, such as the Yellow Milkmaid syndrome, reference is made to the frightening arbitrariness with which prominent paintings of cultural heritage collections are distorted and falsified in their digital illustration. In the end, no one can understand which one out of 300 images of Jan Vermeer's Yellow Milkmaid, all of them, of course, different in color and lighting and format, which one of them reflects the current state of the artwork in the Rijksmuseum, or which one can be traced back to an already color-distorting reproduction, or perhaps is merely a result of an embellishment by the photographer. Not even the highest resolution reproduction of Bartolomé Bermejo's painting of the Assumption of the Virgin in the Berlin Gemäldegallery allows us to find out an indication as to whether the small grains of dust dancing in the sunlight above the Virgin's head are only an optical malposition in the digital recording, a contamination of the image carrier, or maybe indeed the early genius of a proto-realistic approach to light effects, as my friend Santiago Alcolea Blanche suspects. Here too, despite all the open availability and despite all the access of digital images, the researcher is not spared from making the pilgrimage to the original in the museum itself. And fake and docu-fiction are ultimately underpinned by artistic interventions when artists like Nora Al-Badri and Gian Nicolai Nellis present a 3D model of a plaster copy of the bust of Nefertiti as an original scan, a scan from the original, and the audience cannot distinguish this model from the true 3D facsimile of the original bust. 3 examples from public, scientific, and artistic perception of the digital museum's object. Obviously, further effects and efforts are needed to keep the promised convergence of virtual and material spheres and to make sophisticated use of the availability of analog-digital transformations. To bridge the gap between the original and its digital media credibility and uniqueness of material culture has to be transferred to its digital formatting. What you see is what we have. Everybody of you remembers WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get from the early times of digitalization. I want to put it this way around. What you see is what we have in the museum. So what you see is what we have should be the unredeemed claim of the virtual museum. But while there are rules and guidelines for the use and circulation of digital objects in the online channels, from licensing and dissemination rules to the fair data principles, there is no familiar support for the production and authentication of digital objects or data streams in virtual cultural heritage. It is left to the individual case study to distinguish the true facsimile from any manipulated or embellished fake. The concept of the digital twin, which in Industry 4.0 assumes the quality control of a material production as opposed to the digital master, has found only limited application in cultural heritage. In particular, there is a lack of pragmatic strategies in at least 4 categories, as I think. First, to create what I call ontic signatures for data in the identity and authenticity of the digital object. Second, to ensure a solid protection against manipulation and corruption of the digital object. Third, to provide persistent, broad, and modulated access. And fourth, to be able to track usage of digital objects like we do it almost with our visitor statistics in the museum. A recent article by Eugene Chang considers the use of distributed ledger technologies, very well known, for example, as blockchain technology, to solve these problems. And my question is, are the international EVA conferences a suitable platform to discuss the concept and to establish a decentralized consortium blockchain in an environment of distributed cultural institutions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. We go on. Thank you very much.
The next presentation is Between Technical Realization and Creative Process, a Berlin pioneer project supporting artistic augmented reality applications. The authors are Stark, Selmanagic, Barsch, Bischoff, Schurer, and Thielen. I hope to have pronounced correctly. Some of you is here, and I ask all the following presenters to limit their presentation to 10 minutes. Otherwise, we go out of time. 10 minutes, please. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you today. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Maja Stark. I'm an art historian working at the intersection of art and computer science in the project Aurora. This project belongs to the research group INCA, led by Professor Jürgen Sieg at the University of Applied Sciences in Berlin. And I would like to draw your attention now to the technology of augmented reality that can combine the analog world with the virtual one. From 2018 to 2021, Aurora, the project that I work in, offers artists and other creative freelancers in the German capital a wide range of 1 or 2 day training courses on augmented reality, short AR. After having visited these courses, the artists can apply for 1 of 5 working places in the project's augmented reality production lab, the AR production lab. Here they get the necessary equipment and support by computer scientists to implement their own augmented reality applications within 3 to 6 months. To save on license costs, the result can also be published under the project's own AR app, Inca AR. For this purpose, the project is funded by the EU and by the Senate Department for Culture and Europe in Berlin. Until now, we count over 400 workshop participations and 14 artistic AR applications. So let me show you one of these applications where you can see quite well how augmented reality works. It is difficult to adequately represent movements, the temporal dimension in painting. The act Descending a Staircase number 2 by Duchamp is probably the most famous testimony to this artistic examination of this problem. An actual examination is the augmented reality work by the Swan Collective. The artist extends his acrylic painting, Cutting Tuesday, with AR. He adds a temporal layer by superimposing the interior with light and shadow movements. But let's return now to my basic research. Sorry, this is not finished yet. Now. Basic, of course, the processes that are going on in our production lab are quite new. The 3 overall questions were: how do creativity, technology, and aesthetics interplay in the collaboration between artists and computer scientists? How far can artists get together with their tutors to implement their original concepts? And how independently can artists work with the AR software after the production lab? As a method, I used qualitative interviews with the 12 artists and the 3 computer scientists in the Aurora production lab, so who were working there or had worked together there until February 2020. And these are my main results. First, AR is a new artistic medium. It is the perfect breeding ground for both artists and computer scientists' creativity. The artist's creativity lies in the choice of AR as an artistic material and the elaboration of a new and coherent application concept. This concept has to be part of their own oeuvre and their own aesthetic, even if they have to modify it depending on the technological feasibility. In the best case, this was in a creative and productive way, as, for example, in this example that you can see here, but I will leave it apart because of the time frame. So, oh no, sorry. And the computer scientist's creativity is focused on technical problem solving, but of course, the technical feasibility will again influence the artistic concept. Similar to artists, the computer scientist's creativity also consists of a material selection, but in terms of finding the most sensible approach, components and plugins. Furthermore, computer scientists help to transfer the artistic to coding concepts. And finally, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Computer science has its own aesthetic. This aesthetic is manifested in the choice of the best code, being both elegant and readable. A beautiful code is smart, structured clearly, it follows the coding conventions, etc. This beauty is invisible for the users, but it is important to computer scientists and it is crucial for the performance of an application. So my second main result. So far, the project's approach has been very effective. According to interviews, on average, 90% of the original concepts could be implemented. Technical restrictions and a lack of time were the main reasons when 100% were not achieved. The values are between 45% one time and even 120% one time, which means that new ideas arose during the development process and enriched the original concept. My third main result, since all the artistic concepts were to a high degree individual, programming always was necessary. After a 2-day programming course as part of the Aurora training, nobody expected that the artists would do this completely independently. The more previous knowledge and the more ambitious they were to work with the technology, the more progress they made. Only 1/3 of the 12 artists said that they will use the AR software, also including programming, after the production lab. And that was my fourth main result. So this is my conclusion and outlook. As soon as there will be intuitive AR authoring tools in the future that do not require programming for individual results, more artists will work with this medium autonomously, and this will come also in the web. At present, there is an urgent need for continuous augmented reality course offerings being tailored to the arts and culture professionals' needs. Otherwise, the professional use of the technology would be left to commercial purpose only, what would really be a pity. What we need are well-trained culture professionals in museums and other cultural institutions in order to create convincing AR concepts and to know about the technology. And what we also need is an artistic debate of this future-oriented technology and medium of AR. In the area of trainings for freelancers of the independent scene in Berlin, the project Aurora could close an important gap. And I think that more and more art academies will recognize augmented and also virtual reality as new artistic media. So the future will be that AR and VR courses will be part of many art academies' education programs. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation, for keeping the time limits. Next presentation is 3D digital models for surgery applications by Francesca Occheddu, by the department by Florence University. Francesca, okay. Florence.
Francesca, ci sei? Francesca?
Francesca, are you here?
Ci ho parlato prima. Francesca?
Francesca, can you give us a sign if you are here? Okay. We turn later on this presentation. The following one is Decoding Digital Curation for Cultural Heritage, a survey of the current frameworks through linkages between digital technologies, preservation actions, and semantic challenges, presented by Tugce Karatas by Turin University. Are you here?
Yes, hi. Hello, everyone.
Okay, go on. Thank you.
Okay, so here I'm going to share my screen. Thank you so much.
10 minutes, please. 10 minutes, okay?
I will be very quick. So basically, I am a PhD student at the University of Torino and doing this research of digital technologies and cultural heritage. It's very amazing to see all the presentation before me, because today I think it's very important to understand how these digital technologies and the cultural heritage emerge in terms of the new technologies and in the light of the global crisis. But what I want to say is that when I started this PhD 2 years ago almost, my topic based on the immersive experience. So I was actually, as a designer before, trained as a designer, I was actually working on the intersection of the design, creation, and the computer science, as the previous slide and the presenter. That what I realized is that there is a connection between design, creation, and computer science, which is easy to tell, but it's not very easy to comprehend in total. And that's why we need this kind of interdisciplinary view. So that's why we created this digital curation schema. So I'm going to go through all these steps to understand how we can combine different interdisciplinary fields while creating the cultural heritage exhibition. Either it's websites, exhibitions, publications. It's kind of like starting with the cultural heritage domain until it's end of the getting into the audience attention. So the goal of this research is, as I told you, examine the contribution of the digital curation in the field, which is fairly new. So basically, digital curation is a form of curation combining with the the curation as in the traditional sense, but combine it with the digital tools. In the long term, I would like to develop a unified digital curation framework, which will help to realize these cultural heritage exhibitions digitally and virtually and on site, and it will be combined with this interdisciplinary view. So what is this digital curation? It's basically actively managing the data. It's since its beginning until the end. So it's combining the accessibility, preservation, authentication, personalization, and integration issues. So As an operational workflow, we can consider as all the life cycle of the cultural heritage domain, from its preservation, curation, and management of the data, but also emerging fields which can be bridged between the researcher, practice, the different trainings and different disciplines and institutions. So it's kind of comprehensive umbrella of all. So why, you might ask that why digital curation is still far from being a common practice then? Because mostly cultural institutions neglect the importance. So as we realized during this crisis that every institution actually wanted to, their exhibitions or the collections get digitalized, but digitization and digitalized is not the same thing. So the cultural assets and the digital assets are challenging each other in the sense of the connection and interoperability. And there are numerous software environments, as we've seen and listened today. And these disciplines and digital materials makes it not easy to unify one unique software. And so like just basically the digital curation, as I told you, fairly new. It coined in one of the conference about the digital documents in 2001. And since then, there are a couple of researchers and institutions try to combine and unify frameworks. So what I do is that getting sense of all the frameworks and understand what are the tools, what are the softwares, and what are the steps that we need to take account that makes our digitalization process more easy and also less time consuming and less expensive, let's say. And these are the tasks that actually common in many of the frameworks. So data creation and acquisition, data curation and preservation. So I will go through all the details and give some examples just to be quick. And you can here see the overall schema we created. So it's basically the technical possibilities and some outcomes as well as the input and output. So it starts with the data acquisition and it ends either with the data publication, documentation, and repository. So as you might know that the data creation and acquisition is just the simple terms, and simply acquisition brings that data from an outside source, or you can make some samples, signaling, as we talked today about the GIS or laser scanning. So these diverse tools and workflows actually chosen by the professionals and specialists to get the best quality of data. And this is one of the examples. So to recreation of one of the projects of the Le Corbusier, the famous architect, researchers actually use the archives as well as the data creation of from the scratch. So this is kind of the problem that like you sometimes need to get the data and then you have to interpret it. So this is the problem of mostly the projects. And the next step is the data processing and modeling. And this is also related with the metadata. So you put the more, so like you tag or you make available data about other data. So this is kind of the different professions use the different standards. But basically, as an example, you will understand the famous Mona Lisa is just like can be provided with different metadata. So like where is it, for example, so the data provider is the Musée de France, and then the person on the right-hand side on the bottom is the Leonardo da Vinci. So to understand all this process, we have this raw data, which we collect at the beginning and then process it, enrich it with the metadata, and then it will be the data interpretation process. So this process is actually this making sense of all the numerical data. And now you have to build this model or the knowledge. So this is kind of the giving all the project owners or the project workers in the holistic overview of data. So as an example, in Turkey, there is an archaeological site called Çatalhöyük. So this is over 40, 50 years of project. So to understand how many people or how many international researchers from the different disciplines, we now have the tools to analyze all this visualization in 3D. So this is kind of the creating this model of the knowledge. And then this knowledge at the end with this curation and preservation field can be semantically integrated. And then this kind of relational database can interpret in this kind of different communities. By different communities, I mean, it's as an example, for example, this archaeological repository, TIDAR. So as you can see that if you're not very specialized in this kind of ontologies, it might be not easy for you to understand, but there are the taxonomies and database and all this kind of the coding process, which can actually a part of the process, but also to understand and give the overall process to all the scientific people. So, and also data documentation and archiving is about this kind of, again, the database, but to understand the data. So why it was collected or who was collecting the data. So it's basically the making sense of the data and to understand the archive or documentation process. The same example as Çatalhöyük has this Living Archive website. So in this website, there are two phases. So the back end and the front end actually combines all these semantic relations. So it's easier to understand when you are reaching for example, which years of the excavations or who did the excavations. So it's easier to understand and reach all the knowledge about the Çatalhöyük project. And the last step is the data publication and dissemination. So I think this is where we are struggling at the moment, that like several interfaces actually combine this rich metadata and rich media content. But the problem is, who are we providing to who, and who are these people we are providing for? So this is kind of the curating the cultural heritage assets, but also combining with this semantic knowledge. So there's an open source system called Omeka. This is one of our projects, also BRKO. So it's an excavation project in Japan. So this Omeka project is the basically content management system. And creation of this website is coming from all this scientific data and make it available also internationally for the general public and also scientific professions. So just
can you go toward conclusion, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just to conclude, so it's the digital curation helps to conceptualize the entire process, which make easier to divide the tasks and make it like the roles and responsibilities easier to define. And then you can actually provide training as in tools, AR or software applications. So it's kind of the conceptualizing all the process. So the future steps, actually, as I told you, one of the projects will be realized, and then I will try to create a framework, unified framework, which everyone can use, and then test it with this real project. Thank you so much. And if I put some additional info, if you would like to learn more about me and my project, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So let's try to see if Francesco Keddo is here. Okay, we go on. on the next presentation, Through the Aleph, a glimpse of the world in real time, by Jing Zhu of the New Jersey, USA. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, please go on.
Hi. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I really appreciate that you accommodated my time zone. So I'm going to share my screen now. Gosh. Right. Can you guys see it? Oh, right now. Can you see it?
We see your presentation. Okay, go on.
Very well, thank you. So my project is Through the Aleph, and the title of the project was inspired by two great literary works: The Aleph by Jorge Luis Borges, and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Perhaps the computer is your modern-day looking glass, and we're all eyeless as we peer through our screens at alternate reality. So this is a net art project. It has 7 visual components. It offers an unprecedented visual and interactive experience. So you're looking at the live network. So you could go into each one of the dots and look at the cameras. None of the cameras are my own, so I extracted images into this artwork, and also I later on created time-lapse video. So for instance, if I go into this one connected, each camera is different. So this one, I could not really see my mouse, I'm sorry. So this one is connected to Washington, DC, and this is a live feed from there. Now, so this work, it connects individuals and global environment, Earth and outer space, eternity and time, art and science. It visualizes microcosm and macrocosm, the diversity of human individuals, and the global environment, and Earth and outer space. So I'm going back to my presentation. So I would like to break down my presentation into 5 sections. And first is Borges. If you're familiar with his work, his short story Aleph was the main inspiration of this project. The story goes, he was invited by one of his friends, and when he go to the cellar at one particular point, he was able to see the world from anywhere, anytime. And you have to remember, this was written in 1945. There was no internet. Internet was still at its gestation. And Borges is definitely ahead of his time, and his imagination is beyond his generation. So what is Aleph? He gave a very well definition, very good definition in his work. Aleph is the first Hebrew letter, and it means number 1. But in the meantime, it means 1,000. So there is a paradox between 1 and 1,000, the single number and greatness and wholeness. So it connects heaven and earth, oneness and diversity. Making this work was using standard HTML, CSS. I actually tried a different technology before I settled on the final work, because I was trying to pull the image into a more customized way, have given more dynamic visual presentation, but unfortunately it just gets so heavy. I have 140 webcams pulling from all over the world. It crashed my browser over and over, so I end up with a very simple technique to make it work. And that's a breakdown of this project. It has 3 layers. According to Edward Tufte, among the most powerful devices for reducing noise and enriching the content of display is a technique of layering and separation. Visually strategize the various aspects of the data. So in this work, the lowest layer, I call that lowest, which is a background layer, is a video. The video was from NASA, so it's copyright free, and also the a constellation is a dynamic loaded constellation once a month. I got this from one of the university. Later on, I can show you the credit from Israel. The second layer is the 12 hours of the sun. The sun, there are multiple different colors of the sun. I choose blue color simply because it's a resemblance of the Earth. And then the third layer is time and the webcams. And that breakdown of the geographic location. I did push down the equator because the northern hemisphere just simply have way more countries, and I need more space. So that's where the equator was separated there. And based on cross, that the grid give this infinite and direction to expand your work. So if I ever have more time, I would break down each webcam into 4, and then I could add more into there. Now, so that's the following about 7 slides that just give you a visual idea of how the work was breakdown. So that's a webcams, 140 webcam, but I did add a few time-lapse video from the planets near us, because the Antarctica don't have many countries, so I need something to populate the last row. And then that's a NASA solar image. It changed every 12 hours. And that's the video and the constellation. And that's the data from the ocean temperature from different, that was made by processing to draw data from live, from the internet. And the last component is time. So this little line there, it works like a second hand of a clock. So when it wipe around the screen, it's present 1 minute. And that's the interaction that you just saw. And that's the credits of all the data and the information. And here I made a little clip from if you go to my paper, you were going to see the Vimeo video. But this one, that's each month I spend 1 weekend to capture the webcam. So I continue that for the entire year for 12 months. So here, the beautiful part is when you look at the 12 months altogether, you see the change of time, change of the seasons, and also the and how people was behaving as well. So so here, and when you look at the time-lapse video, pay attention to this one where my mouse is. That's Antarctica, and the first 3 seconds it will show you the midnight sun. So I was quite happy it was captured some of the very important things on Earth. All right, now next one is a capture. It's probably one of the most tedious work. I was not prepared. I thought I finished the project, just need to record the work, but actually I realized none of the webcam were mine, so they break all the time, and so I have to capture multiple days in order to patch up all the bad ones. So the rationale, I was an avid traveler, and I was inspired by life-changing power of seeing Earth from space by the astronaut. So I was wondering, what are the eyes of the Earth? How could I present a different perspective of life through civilian cameras? I understand that many artists have done brilliant works using civilian cameras and tackle the problems about, for instance, privacy and social and people's rights. But what I really wondered is how we look at humanity from a distance and how we understand we are one after all. So the totality of humanity, so in infinite space, that was my main concept, the unity in infinity. And that's the conclusion. I think I'm ahead of time, but I would like to add one thing is this project, it serves no practical and material end. It's an end in itself. It offers no purpose other than the joy of contemplation, the need of human consciousness, and the curiosity of exploration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Ok, let's proceed. Facciamo l'ultimo e poi chiediamo. Se no si fa da ultimo. Non so. Next presentation is Augmented Sculptures of No Era by Nina Soshna of Moscow, Russia. Are you here? Nina Soshna, are you here? Augmented Sculptures of No Era. Okay. Francesca Occhetto is here. Chiudiamo. Okay. So, waiting for these last two presentations in case the presenter will be here later. We go to the next session chaired by Professor Cappellini.
Yes, we have probably one or two of the speakers not connected before, coming later. We are in due time because we have not all complete presentation the afternoon. But anyway, I am very proud to be near real time. So we have a section 4, which is culture activity, real and the virtual gallery, and so on. The first is Sarah Penko. Sarah, I hope you are there. Sarah.
Thank you.
Allora,
I'm here.
you can go.
I'm here.
Vai.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Vito Cappellini, for inviting me to this conference, and welcome. A moment, please. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sara Penko. I am restorer and CEO of CIPAL Penko. I am creator of a patent granted for method called Smarticon, and CIPAL Penko was born from the encounter between the innovative contents of the patent and the engineering experience of CIPAL. Our ambition is to give life to a unique know-how to the present day dedicated to the cultural heritage sector, since it represents a vital resource for humanity. The heart of our contribution is in the realization of this Smarticon scientific method and in the innovation that arises from the adaptation of CIPAL's cutting-edge technologies to the cultural heritage needs. Smarticon is a digital platform designed to accommodate the ordering of knowledge that derives from the academic world. For this reason, the method can be considered reliable because the information is already validated. Smarticon means intelligent image, since it allows you to investigate the work of art starting from the iconographic description of the subject depicted and continuing with the recovery of all the information in charge of the enhancement of the asset and the research for truth, as the description of works of art, enhancing documents, account books of the painters, etc. The project aims to place a hermeneutic order in the cognitive heritage lavished by the experts and to make it highly accessible. Attention, please. All the information relevant to the cultural heritage sector, even though different for status and nature, are transformed into heritage of digital information, with both the characteristic of being easily consulted thanks to a cognitive engine. The method gives origin to an innovative model applicable to any type of artifact on a global scale. CIPAL is one of the leading companies in the European panorama for the innovative multimedia engineering technologies with a considerable added value. One of the points of strength of the company is in the cybersecurity, where CIPAL is institutionally recognized as an engineering reference for the management and production of information, national, NATO, EU, in the context of safeguarding the heritage of knowledge. The skills revealed to be particularly strategic for the advantages that they can offer it adapted to the art sector. Sipalpenko has created an intelligent platform that is not limited to the storage of the single material asset, but also includes in the concept of cultural heritage the ordering of the cognitive heritage conceived as an autonomous and independent resource. Through repetitive and methodical processes, the information is transformed in enunciates. The enunciates are the heritage of digital information that supplies a wide and differentiated network of interconnection capable of establishing reciprocal relationships and correlations to rediscovery of lost knowledge. Smarticon can analyze and connect all the various issues of the work of art, questioning different archives and databases. In this way, we can look at the work as a whole. Smarticon is the first prototype of a local ecosystem and bases its assumptions on the concept of culture of complementarity, a model that aims to break down the ruptures in order to become a holistic planetary ecosystem. Now we can see a brief demonstration of how Smarticon works applied to a painting located in the Nantes Museum. The artwork has been studied by prestigious experts, but the iconographic identification is still controversial. It is about Saint Jerome or Saint Onofrius. Let's try to identify the saint using Smarticon. Observing the painting, we identify the certain attributes. We only recognize a skull and book. We start entering data into the system. Smarticon supports the user throughout the entire process and makes the research extremely simple and intuitive. If we have identified the topic, we can select it in the tree. In our case, it's clear that we are talking about a saint, so we selected the argument. The system proposed to follow some guided steps. For example, we selected that we are talking about a male. Smarticon also offers us images of some attributes that are more difficult to identify. For example, some sets of clothing for male saints or particular items that belong to the category of science. If the user does not recognize any, those ahead. In the section of the free terms, we manually enter skull and book. By launching the research, Smarticon investigates inside the heritage of digital information and proposes a first ordering aimed at the identification of the subject depicted, with a percentage of probability. At this point, we can enter into the individual cards and refine your research. By interacting with the contents of the card, the user has the opportunity to refine the search and integrate the iconographic attributes. We don't realize, for example, that Onofrius can have a wreath of leaf around his hips, as in our painting. By simply selecting the words with the mouse, the system will integrate the enunciates in the research. By launching Smarticon again, the system proposes the update result and allows to highlight the iconographic differences that determine the correct identification of the subject, in our case, Saint Onofrius. The system allows to compare our painting with images of other paintings, statues, drawings, etc., which depicted the same subject. In this way, it is possible to investigate the work of art by comparing it with preparatory drawing, paintings, engraving, and so on. Once the subject depicted has been identified, Smarticon is expected to trace other information such as historical documents, chemical characteristics, and much more. The modern era imposed a new pattern of thinking to the world, which bases its rules on the virtuous circle of knowledge as a resource for global collective well-being. This thinking pattern is a mood of innovation and favors the cooperation, social integration, and dialogue among cultures. That is, it is still life in a philosophical, but still theoretical, concept of the new planetary system. The fundamental prerequisite to generate innovation is made explicit in harmonizing everything that is part of an ecosystem. To welcome the challenge of modern times, it becomes essential to face the paradigm of complexity, that is to solve the limits that arise from fragmentation and disruption of the source of knowledge. The CIPALPENCO ambition is to share with the world the first fruit of a planetary ecosystem, which makes dialogue between different cultures possible, restoring rupture and any form of disgregation, and regenerating the scientific and humanistic environment in a creative dimension, which is the source of knowledge adapted to the need of modern times, and above all, contextualized in the challenges that today's reality requires us to face. The modern concept of knowledge passes through the culture of complementarity, and this conceptual, cultural, social, and even economic metamorphosis is destined to open the borders to the convergence of local ecosystem in a shared global ecosystem. Smarticon gives life to an innovative ordering of knowledge, which generates a synergy capable to tracing as much information as possible related and correlated to an artifact, namely the genetic code of the work of art. Thank you for the attention you have dedicated me, and I leave you with a movie through which we want to share with you our love for art and the reason of existence of our company.
Thank you very much, Sara.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks to Sara, very active and here. We have Dominique Lenguier or Catherine Toulouse, visualization of the planning building states of Liban-Minster. You are there? Dominique or
yes,
Catherine?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can speak.
Okay, now I have to first start the presentation.
Yes, you can start.
Can you see anything?
Go on, Dominique.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
You see the slides. Okay, so I changed for the second. No. First, thank you for inviting me to. My name is Dominik Lenkel, as you said. I'm an architect in Berlin. I'm chairholder in architecture and visualization at University of Cottbus nearby. I'd like to present to you one of our latest projects, the Bern Minster, in the beautiful little town Bern in Switzerland. It's just been published in a wonderful book, which is actually nearly a codex. And this visualization project was realized not as a utopia, what we've been seeing before, but within the framework of a multidisciplinary 4-year research project at the University of Bern and the Bern Minster Foundation with archaeologists, art historians, building researchers, cathedral architects, and stonemasons. This is the view from 1529 from the opposite bank of the Aare, which is the river around Bern. The visualizations were an integral part of this research project and therefore contributed to a gain in knowledge. Creating visualizations for a contribution to historical building research, first of all, raises the question of a suitable appearance. And this is where I would greet Andreas Bienert from Town to Town for this wonderful expression, credibility is fragile. This is exactly what we think is the main reason for showing or illustrating archaeological or art historical knowledge in a way that definitely excludes any misleading realism. So the Bern Cathedral is a building that has not only marked by changes in plans, but also by replacements. In addition, a largely unknown predecessor building stood in about the same place, which you see here. The changes in planning took place during the construction process. There are only a few findings from the predecessor building, and changes in the planning of the cathedral are indicated by structural elements, but without revealing all the details of the rejected plans. So you have to imagine that something completely different has been planned and then omitted. So they really changed while constructing. In many cases, therefore, there are clear indications of circumstances which cannot be definitively clarified on the basis of the present state of knowledge. In such a case, we're talking about uncertain knowledge. For example, it is undisputed that there was a predecessor building. However, the few foundation remains allow for several equally plausible building forms. The same applies to the changes in the planning. The indications of such changes are much more subtle than the remains of the previous foundation. They include, for example, begun vaulting beginners, whose form and orientation appear strange in the realized buildings, which was the reason to examine why they were there and what they indicate. While they would fit for an alternative completion that does not correspond to the present one. The finding thus suggests a change in the planning during the progress of the construction. But above all, it raises the questions of the form that was originally intended. A fundamental distinction is therefore made between planning and implementation stages. As in the case of the predecessor building, it is obvious that the cathedral is completed and compared with other buildings, which allows hypotheses to be made about the rejected planning. Here you see the hypothetical gallery on the west end of the cathedral, which in reality has never been constructed. Now you see the reason for this abstract representation. The gallery, which you see in the end, or at the bottom, in the right picture, in the center about, makes sense in this construction, but has never been realized. Although the lower part of most of the columns indicate this. Now in both cases, the predecessor building and the unrealized plans, this uncertainty is not only that many things cannot be clarified. The uncertainty also includes several mutually exclusive, that is, contradictory possibilities. In view of these uncertainties, the fundamental question of what should and can be shown in such a visualization is added to the considerations of an appropriate appearance. A visualization is most likely to serve scientific knowledge as if it remains as close as possible to the hypothesis. Since historical building research moves argumentatively between construction and appearance, it is obvious that the illustration should also be based on the specific characteristics of the phenomena investigated. That is, to visualize both the construction principle and the resulting spatial impression in a comprehensible way. And while construction is demonstrated or explained quite easily in diagrams, spatial impression is the question of virtual photography. To this end, some aspects are deliberately excluded from the depiction, of which perhaps the most obvious ones will be briefly explained in the following, namely materiality, so it looks like plaster, which is obviously unrealistic, stone joints, and sculptures. Here you see a hypothetic sacramental house in the choir around 1450, which has most completely disappeared. The reproduction of each individual stone could only include those surfaces that are still preserved, while due to the inherent uncertainty described above, stones that are no longer preserved, as well as, and this is important, stones that were planned but never built, could basically only be represented fictitiously. This situation is quite similar with the representation of materiality, or the absence of the representation of materiality. Also, the representation of the actual surface condition of each individual stone would be limited to the still preserved stones. All other surfaces would have to be shown without materiality anyway, or again, fictitious. Because of fictitious, not only apparently lifelike representation would create a wrong impression of certain knowledge. Moreover, the visual effects of natural surfaces would clearly dominate the geometric statement behind them. In order to keep the proportion of purely fictitious additions to a minimum, it was therefore decided, in this case not only by us, but by all the members of the team, to also exclude materiality completely from the presentations of the building research hypothesis. This is the choir in 1517 to 1528. The limitation of the visualization to space-creating surfaces and edges is also done in order to be able to compare planning and realization statuses directly, and also in the urban context, for this concerns the outside pictures. In this way, for example, the condition of the cathedral during the construction of the choir walls can be directly compared when the then still upright remains of the previous buildings without the differences in knowledge of the two buildings impairing the overall spatial impression. This consistency of the picture, that is the coherence of the representation, is a fundamental prerequisite for the architectural evaluation and, most important for us architects, the architectural interpretation of the hypothetical appearance of a historical condition. Closeness means that all components of an image are coordinated with each other. Here you can see a very, very short temporal overlapping of the root screen in the left lower area and the vault in today's present form, vaulted, not straight bars, which only lasted for about 1 year in 1573. The depictions of the Burnminster initially follow the statements of the building research from the point of view of architects, and you might even augment this to all sort of visual artists. it seems worthwhile to consider, for example, how in this picture, this root screen, which was built at the time of the provisional wooden beam ceiling, would have looked under the vaulted nave. As it has been, it turned out, it has been there for a very short time, but it has been initially planned for this vaulted nave. Now, instead of a hypothetical planning phase, we show here the short period, which was real. The most striking feature of the visual reproduction is the abstraction of the virtual model in total. The image you can see here is a very long phase from 1530 to 1590 about, and it's nevertheless not quite unrealistic. It's out of the window of the fresh, newly built town hall, just opposite of the city. The challenge of a scientifically based and at the same time immersive visualization is to reconcile two initially opposing aspirations. The first is abstraction with the aim of modeling only those objects, edges, if possible, that are explicitly part of the building research statement and thus can be proven by research or at least are well-founded. The second is the reference to classical architectural photography with the aim of immersion, that is to immerse yourself in the world that is depicted. Abstraction as a means of representation is also an established method in architecture. It serves here primarily to find forms. Therefore,
excuse me, can you go to the conclusion in a short time?
I am quite there. In the case of abstraction of design tool, the claim is to design a form that is clearly recognizable as abstract, that awakens the association of architecture in the viewer. In the case of hypothesis, it is to evoke the idea of the hypothesis directly again in the viewer. For a convincing and reliable spatial impression, it is therefore necessary not only to work on the tools of design, but also to use the tools of photography, which then we call virtual photography. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. We go on apart if Francesca Ucchedo appears. Francesca, are there? No. So we go to Filippo Queirolo, Arts and Culture Districts, to Arts a New Paradigm.
Okay. I introduce my presentation in order to check whether you can see it. I hope it is available. Can you please confirm that you can see that? Can you see my presentation?
For 10, 12 minutes maximum.
Yes, can you see my presentation, Vito?
No, we cannot.
I see you, but you have a presentation you can do if you have.
I have, I'm just trying to share, but I have. I try again, just 1 second. Present now.
No, you must start yourself, Filippo.
Yeah, but I'm strongly advantaged if I have the presentation. So, can you see now?
It's coming.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. It was just that. Okay, I get information regarding the timing of 10 minutes. I will try to keep that. Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm very glad to be here. My subject is related to ecosystem. Ecosystem in this case mainly refer to arts and cultural district. I speak in this case as a representative of the promotive committee of Da Vinci Foundation. This is a group of persons that since 2019 is working in order to support and accompany the creation of projects that could be highly representative on a wide sense. So we are trying to work not only in Italy, but also in other countries in order to identify and support relevant project that could be flagship initiative for Europe, for the participants, and for other guys. In this case, I divided my presentation in two sides. One is mainly related to cultural areas, so I call them humanities, and another part that is more related to the scientific part of my subject of my work. I started taking care about the humanistic side, so please accept if I move a little bit farther from the previous discussion. Nowadays, in the recent period, we are living in a era of complexity, as well as Sarapenko illustrated before. We come from a modern ethic that is based on some assumption about the way we can interact and the economic dynamic and the social responsibility. And we are moving towards a new vision that is mainly devoted to understand that the resources that we have are the same for me and for you, and they are scarce. So in this case, we are changing the perspective from which we are looking into our future, and from which we are trying to identify how we can improve our life. And this could be called an ethic of destiny. In this case, we take care, in most of the case, about our life. And as Vito and other gentlemen before explained, we are trying to take care about new subjects that are related, of course, to environment sustainability, as well to health and wellness, or food and nutrition. So these kind of subjects are much more related to the life of the people. And so even when we speak about technological innovation, we are obliged to take care about this general framework, especially if we look about relevant projects, so projects that could have impact in the long term. They are, of course, related to some drivers. Here I have just identified the important to understand the measure of wellness, or measures of wellness, the lifestyle, how we live, and the economic dynamics, and a deeper investigation could be done with respect to each one of that topic. When I try to discuss about this subject, and I move towards the arts and cultural districts, when we try to discuss about how we can change one territory, how we can change one area, one city, how we can improve the living and the lifestyle over there, sometimes people just think about technology, or people just think about how European Commission can give us funding in order to do that. But in the middle, it exists something more. Of course, it exists some decision makers that are very important. They have long-term vision. They are important. They can provide resources. But on the other side, in every place, in every country, in every city, there is people. And these people are much more important because we understood that it is crucial to design the future in accordance with the idea and with the general thinking of a local territorial community. So a proactive participation is needed in order to try to find a matching between the decision maker and the proposition that arrive from the bottom. People can say, we do always like this. We present the project to the Europe. Who present the project is just someone. When you look for an ecosystem, we need to take care about something more. How can we design a common future together? Basically, we need to take care about several points. And starting from culture, this session, this edition of EVA conference is extremely attractive for me, because you decided to start from culture, traditions, culture, arts, and move towards the future. So technological innovation. In order to go in that direction, it is needed to take care about something that maybe someone thinks is more social or anthropological, that is related to the dialogue, that is related to the value of diversities. In this case, I try to highlight the technological innovation should be in the middle of two other important parts. I focus on the shared vision. So the importance to have a shared vision. So when I speak about cultural infrastructure, infrastructure, when you focus on cultural district, usually we are used to think about museums, performing arts center, cultural hubs. And in most of the case, we are used to think about how digital humanities can improve a museum and the area just around that, or how a decision maker, how a city planner could give us a role, a project in order to put three of them in contact, maybe a couple of museum or a cultural hub. In some other case, but it is more rare, we can find a group of industries, maybe small and medium enterprise and few artisans, and try to establish a territorial trademark. Also, in this case, we have cultural district. It is less artistic, it is more cultural, but it is important as well. I focus in this presentation on the proposition of veto. When Professor Cappellini decided to present to IVA community his great idea about the possibility to think about IVA conference as a brainstorming, I was very attracted by the possibility to put on the table a proposition that is related to the fourth kind of arts and cultural district. And I hope that there will be chance to discuss about this in the future. And we are quite prepared with some information, some real estate development, some funding, some activities, and a lot of local stakeholders that has been involved in this way. So I'm speaking about when you have a set of cities of art that are linked together by the history, by the tradition, where when you have some architectural creation, some naturalistic attraction that could represent a district as it is very common for everybody of us to say, but very few people is doing it. So from local tradition, from culture, we can move to a cultural and district, we can move to an arts and cultural district. But in order to do this, for sure we needed to create a project that is suitable to the state of the art from a technological point of view and the European guideline. But we need to start from a humanistic perspective. We need to assume that the key successful factor of our doing is related to the common narrative that exists in that area. So the key point is to combine culture and science. In order to work in that direction, it is possible, it is required, it exists a lot of funding regarding that, and some activity could take place. Speaking about Italy, in Italy we have a huge number of districts and a lot of archaeological park or other places. In some of them, I'm currently involved directly with several other guys. If we speak about the place where this year EVA conference is virtually held, it is Firenze. Firenze, Pistoia and Arezzo, they have an extremely important background, and even now UNESCO, the perception of the people from everywhere around the world and the people that lived during the Renaissance in this place are mentioned and are considered an important heritage to be used, to be accessed in order to think about how the world should be improved, how humanities can think in a different way. We need to have access to the cultural, to the artistic and cultural heritage. We need to have access to what exists in a certain area, but we need to think about how we have access and for which reason, why we are looking for that. What about our consciousness and what about it could happen in the future? So this is the humanistic perspective that I suggest and I recommend to consider in this case. For instance, Florence has a lot of relevant features related also to the industrial activity, mainly related to fashion and textile industry, and also a lot of international university. Cooperation with other countries could be important. Arezzo also can show something similar because the people that live over there, because the very important museum that exists and the relevant antiques that are located over there, starting from some unique pieces of Galileo, Marconi, Meucci, and Volta. Pistoia, on the other side, is much more related to nature and environment. So in this case, you have Florence, the capital of Renaissance. You have Pistoia, that for nature and environment, sense of community is going to plan a very important renovation that should be supported by scientists like you, by IVA community. So in this kind of situation, what I suggest to think about is to think about the history and local tradition, to try to understand which is a narrative and which could be the storylines of these three cities and the territory that exists over there, in order to formulate a shared vision based on the stakeholder engagement. So people that live over there should be interested, should share that kind of vision. In this way, there will be the possibility to formulate the brand identity of an art and cultural district. It could be a relevant project for Europe, it could be a relevant project to cooperate all together, it could be a relevant project to show to everybody what EVA community is doing together also with other partners, with other players, in order to arrive to the development of a great example. And doing an example in Florence, Pistoia and Arezzo could be so impressive for many other countries. So I conclude just saying that my contribution to this conference is not related to the conclusion of a scientific research, but mainly to the job that I did during the last 15 years and that now is concentrated in the Da Vinci Foundation project. I tried to present to the community some ideas about a possible way to work on an ecosystem. And the very important ecosystem now is the arts and cultural district. There is not a lot of people in Italy and in Europe that they care about this kind of ecosystem in the, let's say, in accordance with the state of the art. And I think that a lot of job could be done and a lot of pages could be written. I am available to discuss about this, getting opportunity for what Vito proposed to follow us together with the other member of a scientific committee of IVA. So starting from cultural innovation, moving to the technology transfer that you discussed, and by considering digitalization as a key point on site in order to permit physical access, as well as in order to enable remote access, so in order to create a thematic community worldwide, along these three paths, cultural innovation, technology transfer, and digitalization, I consider that something relevant could be done, and that is extremely close to what we discussed during last edition in 2019, and what I have seen during this edition in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Filippo, and we try to do something for Florence, Pistoia, Arezzo. Thank you very much. We go on. We have the next paper from Diaz, if it's there, integrating interactive technology to museum experience. Thank you, Filippo. We have someone of the paper of Chandler, Hummingbird, Robert Pickering, and Diaz, integrating interactive technology with museum experience. If not, we go on with...
Diaz, your microphone's off.
Okay. You can go on.
Diaz has to unmute his microphone.
Yes, we don't understand. You can speak? We don't have a voice. You can speak? We try later. Now we go to Valentina Vavassori is there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, go on. And we try to recover the other.
Okay, I will share my screen. Yeah. Okay. Screen. Share. Oh, yeah. And okay. So, hello everyone. And what I want to discuss with you today is my research about chatbots in museum and how they can rewrite the physical space inside the museums and how they can propose different kind of narratives and stories. So, first of all, in order to understand what is the impact of a chatbot on visitors, I've selected a case study. These are three house museum in Milan, Museo Pol di Pezzoli, Museo Bagatti Valsecchi, and Casa Museo Boschi di Stefano, and they developed this chatbot together, the Di Casa in Casa chatbot. So just to remember, a chatbot is one of the possible definitions of a chatbot is a human-computer dialogue system with natural language. And these are the museums, and they are quite different from one another, also in terms of type of collections and the type of way of exhibiting their collections. And what they did was creating a unified narrative experience. So they created this chat on Facebook, and the visitors need to interact with it, and the idea is to solve a treasure hunt. So visitors need to pay attention to the collection, so they need to be physically inside the museum, and when they're inside the museum, they need to pay attention to the object in order to solve the riddles. The final aim of this experience is to solve this mystery of an immortal mage. So the idea is to rewrite the physical space with a different kind of narrative. But the question is, how did visitors react to this kind of experience, and how can we study it? What I did was doing ethnographic observation of people use the chatbot in various guided and non-guided experience. I also conducted interviews and surveys with some of the participants. And finally, I confronted their own reaction to the museum's experiences with the standard visitors' reaction and experiences when they did not use the chatbot during individual visits. So I stopped simply visitors at the end of the experience asking questions about what they did remember and what they thought about the museum. So from this discussion, what emerges are a set of common themes and problems that the visitor underline. First of all, a problem was related to the idea of naming the chatbot, which is something related both related to the concept of transparency and also to the concept of conversation flow. First of all, sometimes visitors had not a clear idea that the chatbot was an AI. Sometimes the line between thinking about it as an AI, as a person, was quite blurry. And this idea of difficulty to understand what the chatbot was is absolutely related to the conversation flow. Why? Because when you are interacting with a person, you expect the person to know how to discuss with you, to know the natural languages, to know how to have turn-taking. So they expected a perfect conversation flow. The result was that the idea that the way they reacted was that when the chatbot didn't understand their answers, in particular because sometimes they use like synonyms, for example, well, the reaction was quite bad. Visitors lamented the lack of flexibility, for example. And also, they lamented because sometimes the chatbot gave them the wrong points. So they didn't recognize the correct answer, and they didn't recognize the correct idea, the identification of an object. This is also highly related because when they realized that the chatbot didn't understand the conversation flow, they reacted quite badly. They started cursing and swearing at the chatbot. Their reaction was, of course, particularly complicated and an issue if we think that the chatbot originally was named as a female. It was called Ambra Alfieri. So if we think back, for example, for the recent UNESCO report about the problem with technologies and specifically vocal assistant and gender, this is fundamental because it implies the idea that the chatbot, gendered as female, is always available and you can swear and insult it. So to solve this issue, the developers moved from a female identification of the chatbot, from a gendered identification, to a more neutral chatbot. giving therefore a clearer idea of the chatbot as an AI. A second thing which emerged is the problem of explainability. From most of the visitors, the concept of chatbot wasn't clear. Why? Because probably they are an Italian audience, so I conducted interviews with Italians, and the concept of chatbot wasn't self-explanatory. So at the start of the experience, most of the staff in the museum define it as the chatbot of the chatbot game. Then they change it to the game. But the game has hidden in itself all a set of complex discussion about education and entertainment inside museum. It's not free from biases, for example, and some people do not accept the idea to have a game inside a museum. So they moved to a different kind of definition, the digital guide. The definition of the digital guide is quite interesting because it explains quite well what the chatbot does. So having a narrative inside the museum, providing a narrative, but what it doesn't consider is that the fact that for the last 20 years, there's been a lot of research about how visitors are able to make sense of the experience inside the museum, even not guided. So they have an active role in creating their own visit. So calling the digital guide is not perfect. The final definition adopted was the digital assistant, which is the best one. The digital assistant clarifies really well the experience of using the chatbot. So it's something tailor-made, so you can skip, you can change your answers, you can skip from one room to another, from one object to another. And also, it's something that is there if you need it, but it's not guiding you as a visitor inside the museum. Another theme which emerged during some of the experience was the problem relating to language and background, specifically visitors' background. Sometimes, because the chatbot is a description of a place, it's not so clear what it means. For example, or sometimes it gives some background is given. For example, what happened was that some of the visitors were looking for the artworks on the left, so the Bernardino Luini, the San Girolamo, at Museum Paul di Pezzali, but they found out instead, because it was in the same room, they identified the correct artworks and answer, and Antonio Marinoni, the other San Girolamo. This kind of mistake wouldn't be possible for example, an art historian, because for an art historian, of course, Bernardino Luini is considered more important than Antonio Marinoni. And also, probably even for a visitors who will use only the museum physical space. Why? Simply because underneath the Bernardino Luini artworks, there are big labels. Why instead in the Antonio Marinoni there's a small one? But because they were moving through the digital narratives, and they were paying attention to the digital space, but not completely. The fact was they didn't notice the difference. They realized only they were wrong when the chatbot sent them a picture of the artworks. So this is an additional element. So the fact that if you use a chatbot, you can provide the visitors, for example, with videos, sounds, and also pictures, which is something that the visitors really liked during the experience. Also, moving from some themes during the interviews to instead of the visitors' reactions. The visitor reaction were of three main types. First of all, they appreciated the experience with the chatbot, and they found them incredibly engaging and interactive. And also, what they noticed was that they paid far more attention to the museum space. For example, they define it as practical. So they started looking and moving to the museum and doing an experience of digital and physical placemaking, so appropriating the museum. However, some other visitors reacted in different ways. They underlined how the chatbot was a disconnection from the physical and social space of the museum. You spend too much time looking at the phone, for example. So what they noticed was the cocoonish effect, as defined by Ito, Kabe, and Anderson. So this idea of isolation created by using the phone. However, most of the time, the visitor experience was actually the opposite. From what I've noticed, in particular in experience where people didn't know each other, people started, because they needed to solve the riddle, started discussing with each other and understanding with each other the technology. So the chatbot acted as a conversation starter in order to discuss the museums and the technology they were using. So it's a good moment. It was a moment of reflection and discussion inside the museum, even if people didn't know each other before. Finally, to conclude, visitors found the experience engaging and educational. However, they underlined some risk, in particular of social disconnection and physical disconnection. And also they underlined the problem of transparency. In general, AI in museum can act as a moment of reflection, both from the point of view of the museum and from the visitors. So choosing what kind of story the museums want to tell, and also from the point of visitors, it may act as a moment of reflection for the role of technologies in the digital age and their impact on visitors and more in general of our society. So thank you so much for listening. Here's my contacts. So if you have any question, I'm more than happy to answer. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Valentina. We have no time for questions, but we appreciate your speech. And before to pass the last session to my co-chairman, Enrico De Re, I ask if someone
I am ready
lost
to talk. I am ready to
Hello?
talk.
Yeah, Professor Diaz?
Yes.
Yes, you can speak.
Okay, let me get my presentation on. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And here's my contribution. I actually have recorded it. The subject of our paper is the integrating interactive technology with museum experiences. Co-authors are Mr. Hummingbird from the Tandy School of Computer Science. Can you hear me? Dr. Pickering from the Museum of Science and Management, and Dr. Diaz from the Tandy School of Computer Science.
We can hear it.
The objective
Can you
is
see
the
it?
integration of interactive technology with museum exhibits to provide an enhanced experience for museum visitors. The focus of our presentation is two traditional Native American activities. Those activities, or games, can teach knowledge and physical skills, and they're valued by traditional societies. Computer variations that we provide can simulate the skills and help today provide a better enhanced visitor experience. The traditional games that we picked are one skill game for children and one skill game for adults. The skill game for children is help to develop hand-eye coordination is the act of spear throwing or target practice. We incorporated the atlatl or spear thrower because it was natural in our implementation. The skill game for adults that we selected is Chunky. It was played by the Southeast American tribes since the 900s of the current era. The atlatl, from the Nahuatl language, atlatl, is a spear thrower. It provides leverage for throwing the spears. The force is applied directly to the spear's back end, allowing greater distances of throw, and the accuracy is not diminished. The spear's back end is placed on the atlatl, and the wooden atlatl with ivory inlaid inspected here from the Inuit culture in the 1800s, and it's in display at the Gilchrist Museum in Tulsa. The atlatl is used by the user holding the spear and the atlatl with just two fingers. He lets go of the fingers on the spears as it allows the atlatl to propel the spear forward. The atlatl is held during the throwing action, not released, and that's very important for our application.
Here we can see the atlatl is held with two fingers holding the spear in place. The spear is thrown forward accurately and precisely as long as the thrower does not bend their wrist and the spear keeps facing forward through the entire motion. And here we witness the accuracy boost granted by use of an atlatl.
Chunky is the adult skill game. It's the Native American skill game that has different names: Chunky, Chungi, Chenko, Tunki, or Game of the Poles as it's translated. It was played from the American Southwest all the way up to Cahokia on the Mississippi River, and that's shown in a large area in the map that is attached. Chunky is played with the disc that's rolled out into the play area. The players predict where the disc will rest, and they throw the spear to the expected resting place. The winner's spear is closest to the stop disc. The stone that we have, the chunky stone, is somewhere between the 700s to the 1600s, the current era, and it's about 4 inches in diameter, and it's displayed in the Gilchrist Museum in Tulsa. Traditional accounts have many common elements. The game was played with, say, 1 to 2 players, 1 spear per player, single smooth stone disc. It had cultural significance for the tribes that played it. It was played for many hours on end in an open field with large number of spectators. Gambling was involved with players and spectators, often staking personal possessions. And here is a painting, an oil on canvas painting that is in the Smithsonian Museum of Art by George Catlin, which documented it as a madman's game, playing with a ring and a ball.
We believe that we can raise interest in such historical topics by presenting them in a fun and engaging way, in this case, a video game. Thus, we have created a lightweight game called Spear Thrower VR, a simulation of the competitive spear throwing games we have just explained, and designed to fit within a museum environment. The game runs on the Unity 3D engine, currently on a host PC running Windows, and is played with up to 4 Nintendo Wii Remote controllers, which are referred to as Wiimotes, and a Nintendo Wii IR sensor bar. Before starting the game, the Wiimotes are connected wirelessly to the host PC via Bluetooth. Once the Wiimotes are connected, they will be able to interface with the game. The first screen seen upon starting the game program is the setup screen intended for the operator working at the host PC. The configurable options presented here control the number of players, the game type, the control type, the force multiplier, and the frame leeway. We will touch upon the latter two shortly. Once these settings have been set to the host's liking, they may start the game by clicking on the Start Game button. Spear Thrower VR has 2 distinct game types, Chunky and Target Practice. Chunky simulates the Native American game of the same name, whereas Target Practice tasks players to obtain the highest score by hitting targets. Whichever game type is chosen, the idea of throwing spears remains the same. Players throw spears in the game by emulating atlatl throwing motions with their Wiimotes. The throwing motions themselves are not sufficient, however. Players must also mind the grip button, meant to emulate gripping and releasing spears onto the atlatl. The control type set by the operator comes in two settings, simple and advanced. In the simple control type, the grip button is the B button on the underside of the Wiimote, and players may hold the Wiimote like any other remote control. In the advanced control type, the grip button is the one button on the top side of the Wiimote, and players are expected to hold the Wiimote like it is a spear. Additionally, the advanced control type requires an external Wii Motion Plus accessory attached to the Wiimote for gyroscope functionality. As it is evidently unsafe to throw the Wiimotes themselves at the risk of damaging equipment and harming persons, we believe it is better to draw a comparison between the Wiimote and the Atlatl. When the grip button is held down, the player is holding the spear in their hand, and once it is released, they release the spear and launch it forward with an acceleration equal to the force multiplier set by the operator times the maximum acceleration read by the Wiimote's onboard accelerometer within the last amount of frames equal to the frame leeway value set by the operator. Therefore, in order to throw spears efficiently, players must release the grip button in the midst of and near the end of their throwing motion. The force multiplier and frame leeway values are intended to make this action easier for people who may find difficulty with the controls. Between rounds, loading screens display brief and insightful historical facts on Chunky and the culture surrounding it. These loading screens may be modified by the host by following the applicable instructions in the PDF manual that comes with the game files. The PDF manual also details specific technical details about the game, which may assist the operators in setup. How all of this ties together is that we want to assess the success of such a program in being a fun and engaging educational experience. We wish to document the amount of time spent on task and success in playing the games, and determine if the activities were enjoyable and if they led to a greater interest in the cultures and activities that those games represent.
We want to recognize our sponsors, and here is a list of references that we have in our paper. Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to present.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contribution, very, very interesting. And if no other remaining before presentation, we go to the last session, and the chairman is Rico Del Re, access to the cultural information.
Okay, let's start with the final session, session 5, access to the cultural information. The first presentation is Virtual Galleries, New Trends and Perspective by Marco Carpellini, Paolo De Rocco, Paolo Romoli, Florence Centrica, Florence, Italy. Who is online?
I'm online. Can you hear me? Okay, so I try to share the screen. Okay. Okay, I hope that you are seeing my screen, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the organizers, Professor Cappellini, and thank you for Professor De Re. I present basically what are our achievements in digital representation of art. But before that, I would like to suggest to you all to read this article that is people don't want virtual museum tools, do this instead. There is the website where you can retrieve this article. It is very interesting because you can see that after during the COVID, after a few days of a lot of visits in virtual websites, in the virtual museums and all the digital galleries, you see a drop of the interest. So there is a problem that basically all many of these realizations are not so sticky. And I present briefly what we have done recently, both on the side of digital exhibitions, immersive interactive digital exhibitions. We have brought first in 2016 in Milan, Uffizi Virtual Experience, and it has been successful, especially from the comments of the visitors, enthusiastic comments. So this way of presenting art in a place that is not a museum, is another place. In this case, we were in Fabbrica del Vapore, which is an old fabric that has been restored. It is really engaging for the visitors, both children, adults, and also elderly people. Then we have brought an evolution of this exhibition in Germany, Leipzig, in 2018. And the same year we have brought in China, in Shenzhen, seeing basically the same interest, the same reaction. So we have seen that different cultures react positively to this kind of digital exhibition, which are immersive and interactive. And in last months, we have focused on, starting also before the COVID, but we have focused on another project that is Art-Centrica, that basically wants to bring art to school. So the aim is to bring the art in digital format in schools. And we start with collections of Uffizi galleries and Brera Museum inside the application. And basically the application is based on our platform that connects high-resolution images with concepts, but we have introduced many features that are interesting for schools and for, basically we start from the universities. So I go very fast through all the functionalities of the application, so you can browse the artist, focus on a set of lessons that are for primary, middle, and high schools. You can choose the collection, Brera Museum or Uffizi Gallery Museum. You can have for all the works of art the description, the possibility to compare two works of art like you are seeing now, to Botticelli characters in two different paintings, or to retrieve all the works of art that contain a jewel and retrieving instantly all the other works of art and detail or works of art that have that meaning, so a semantic meaning of jewel, and also many other concepts. Obviously, you have both Brera and Uffizi Galleries masterpieces, so you see Mantegna, or for example, the keys from Francesco Hayez, and the possibility to highlight also the concepts in a painting that are connected to the ontological representation that we have introduced inside our platform. Again, the high resolution, suggestions, and so on. And in this activity, we have been selected for the Global EdTech Startup Awards that have been realized in last January in London, organized by Mindset, which is an accelerator based in Israel that is dedicated to changing the education mindset. And after that, and also after the starting of the COVID, in May, we have been selected by Mindset for the acceleration inside the accelerator, obviously in this period done remotely, but in October, if conditions of COVID will permit, we will go to Israel. And I would like to spend a final few words regarding this education and technology, EdTech space, which is increasing a lot, also due of the COVID experience. And we think that this kind of use of technology for bringing innovation in education can be applied also in art, and we are confident that this is a good path because we have had very good reactions. Also the fact that we were at the final in London and that we have been selected from this Israeli accelerator between 150 companies worldwide is promising. And basically we are trying to innovate how people interact and are engaged by art, starting from the digitization, as also Filippo Quirolo told before, bringing new experience with art outside the museums, inside natural space, and trying to bring art in education places, first of all in schools, but also in an online completely way. Thank you a lot for your attention. You can find on the bottom left my contact details if you want to write me, and thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Rico, I have one information for Valentina Bach, Antonella Fresa, and Francesca Melani, because we don't have the presentation by Dr. Cortumi. I will say a few words about the paper. You can do eventually the two papers you have with the promoter, with the introduction by Antonella Fresa and going on the two. So you can do together the two papers. As you asked me time ago, but I was not able to reply you positively. So now, because we have not the Cortumi paper, you can do that.
Thank you very much, Professor Capellini. It is a pleasure to be with you again. With the many friends, because I recognize many of you, and I'm happy that even in this condition of the pandemic crisis, you managed to have this important happening and updates about our research. The two papers are in fact connected one to the other, and I will take 1 minute to explain how they are connected. One paper is about Pagode. Pagode is a project about contributing to Europeana, and the scope is through participatory approaches in culture to create new contents in Europeana that can highlight the Chinese collections preserved in European cultural heritage institutions. So in this sense, Pagode contributes to Europeana, but it has a strong attention to participatory approaches. The second paper is about REACH. REACH is the social platform about participatory approaches in culture and social innovation, supported by Horizon 2020. It is a social platform, so it has a different scope than Pagode, more widely conceived, but it has a strong attention to the digital cultural heritage, to the access to digital archives. So these two papers has elements in common. Promoter is a partner in the two projects, and for this reason I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to introduce the two papers, but they will be presented by partners who have a key role in the two projects, Valentina for Pagode and Francesca for REACH. So the floor is to Valentina to present Pagode. Thank you very much, and congratulations for the very good happening, even if only virtual this time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Antonella. I will try to share my screen now. Okay. Can you see anything? Hello, can you see my screen?
Possiamo vedere?
No, not yet.
We can see you, but not the screen.
Okay, perhaps it is coming.
Not yet.
Do you see anything yet?
No.
Okay. Perhaps now?
Okay, are you pressing present? Oh, there it is.
Okay. Happily we are here. So yes, thank you very much, Antonella, for briefly introducing Pagode. As the name suggests, it is a project that enriches Europeana. For those who don't know Europeana, but I think everybody knows Europeana now. In any case, it is the European portal to digital cultural heritage. And this project is a project about Chinese heritage in Europe. And we have started in April, and we are already progressing with an interlinked range of activities that start from the definition of the ambit, what is Chinese heritage and what is available in the cultural heritage institution in Europe to represent Chinese heritage. And we are then progressing with content selection, digitization, and metadata curation in order to provide this bulk of material in a high quality to Europeana and to offer this for user engagement and enjoyment. So we want to bring into the spotlight Chinese objects that are in Europe because they are part of Europe's cultural history of trade and exchange. And also we want to encourage a different understanding of the relationships that are between East and West since centuries. Now, in more practical terms, Pagode will aggregate to Europeana a bulk of newly digitized objects and will enrich objects that are already published in Europeana. So we are going to annotate some of the existing objects about Chinese heritage in Europeana, and we are going to do enrichment based on AI and natural language processing of many thousands of this digital cultural heritage that is available. All this work will be highlighted and in a way collected in a thematic space in Europeana, which will be called Europeana China, which will help displaying these collections and a number of editorials to engage users. Next to all this work that pertains to the digital world, we are going to produce additional physical experiences and particularly an exhibition of which I will talk in a moment. So yes, this is the sum up of what we are going to do for Europeana. Basically, we want to bring China-related collection in Europeana, find ways to discover and curate those collections, exhibit them both in virtual and physical format, and explore and open cultural connections to China. Now, this is the homepage of Europeana. I believe all of you are familiar with it. You can see that there is on the very top the very typical search bar where you can insert any keyword to seek for content of interest. And of course, Europeana also wants to sort of guide users towards this amount of content. Europeana gives access to nearly 60 million digital objects, so it is very, very much, and it is sometimes difficult to navigate. So what we are going to create here is a sort of China hub that will have a mix of artificial intelligence search and manual curation to enable users to find content of interest. First of all, we are trying to find key topics or relevant subjects that are represented by high quality digital cultural heritage content from partners' collection. We are also going to find and help retrieving these topics in the new content that we are going to offer and in the existing online content in Europeana. And of course, with all this bulk of material, we are going to deliver crossover editorials that try to, put in relationship these digital cultural heritage items from perhaps different cultural institutions for nice storytelling and an appealing knowledge sharing to the users. And then I mentioned about the exhibition. This exhibition will be a mix of physical and digital experience. Certainly, we are going to create a digital exhibition inside Europeana with the content that is published in Europeana. It will be one main story with different types of objects to represent all this content, and we really hope to create a compelling story for users. This will be published online on Europeana and in all the other projects channels, but it will also become a physical exhibition that will premiere in Italy, in Pisa, hosted by the Museo della Grafica in September 2021. So it will, the physical exhibition will be including a mix of printed heritage photographs about China and Chinese heritage combined with artifacts. We are going to create a format that helps the exhibition to travel because, as I mentioned, it will premiere in Pisa, but then it will move to Brussels for the final event of the project. And hopefully we are establishing contacts also in China with the relevant Chinese cultural institutions for possibly hosting the exhibition also at their premises. During the Pisa launch, we will also engage users and communities, both communities of Italians and communities of Chinese people living in Tuscany for a collection day. So to collect and digitize cultural heritage items, so to say, that are hosted, for example, in all our photographic family albums. And this is normally a very appealing activity that entices reactions from the communities and help people and citizens to feel closer to the cultural heritage. So we are very proud of this initiative. And very few words, final words about the network of Pagoda Europeana China, because next to the Europeana Enriching Project and Digital Heritage Project, we also want to put sort of seeds for a community, for a network of common interest that next to the consortium partners, who is the core of the activities in this project, enlarges to other stakeholders who have a stake and an interest or collections about Chinese heritage and who will be interested in creating connections, establishing synergies, both in Europe and possibly also in China for, as I mentioned, creating synergies and collaborating. So this is the end of my presentation. You see in this slide the website of Pagoda, and we really hope that it will be a successful project with many interactions.
You will go on the second.
Okay, so on the last presentation. Go on. You can go on.
Please, Francesca, the floor is yours.
Okay, sorry. Okay, that's fine. So, thank you, Valentina, and thank you, Antonella, for this introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. So, some words about me. I'm Francesca Melani, and I'm part of the REACH project dissemination team. My academic background is focused on the study of international law, and I'm indeed graduating to the University of Pisa, and then obtaining a master's degree in human rights and conflict prevention at the Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna. So now I work for my company, GoGate, which is involved in European projects since 2012, providing digital support, website presence implementation, as well as network building and communication tasks. And I would add that it's a great pleasure for me to take part in such interesting brainstorming, really. So let me move to the REACH project and share my screen. Okay. Give me a word. Okay, can you see me?
We see you, but not your screen.
Yes. Okay, you can go on. Okay.
Some time, I think. Okay, now?
Not yet.
Eventually, you can speak about, we understand the topic and you can speak only.
Okay, I try to share it in another way. What's that? What about now?
Now it is okay.
Yeah, it is okay.
Okay.
Oh, finally, sorry. So, REACH is a 3-year project started on November 2017 and funded in the framework of Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program of the European Union. Its consortium is composed by 6 European partners and includes 4 universities, 1 Italian small medium enterprises, 1 German cultural foundation, and the Italian Ministry of Economic Development. All partners play active roles in cultural heritage research, innovation, and economic development strategies, and have been selected for providing a rich mix of skills and expertise to the social platform. But what's REACH, and which is its challenge? REACH is a social platform which aims at linking participatory approaches with the capacity of resilience. The main goal is to develop an understanding of the challenges and opportunities for research and innovation in the participatory preservation, reuse, and management of cultural heritage. The project identifies theoretical participatory models and tests them in the practice through 4 thematic pilots in order to propose the adoption of an integrated model of resilience European cultural heritage. The implementation of the project focused on 4 practical areas of action: network building, pilots implementation, promotion of public encounters, and establishment of the online presence. So speaking about the network, I will start saying that the network building has been a focused activity of the REACH social platform since the beginning. Its goal is to promote participation in the research and cultural heritage in Europe, facilitating collaborations and promoting concrete involvement of cultural stakeholders. Nowadays, the REACH networks brings together relevant heritage stakeholders representatives, including research communities, heritage practitioners, from public or private cultural institutions and organizations, as well as policymakers of European, national, and regional and local levels. This community in March 2019 has been the promoter of the symposium named Horizon for Heritage Research, organized by the REACH project under the auspices of the European Commission, in which were discussed the needs and benefits that can be generated from a joint coordination effort. Now, going through the pilot. The REACH pilot covered 4 thematic areas. Implemented under the coordination of a REACH partner, the pilots aimed to advocate the socio-economic value of civic participation in preservation, reuse, and management of cultural heritage. They engaged different types of communities and stakeholders in different situations and political backgrounds, and they reached together and discussed best practices in the development of resilience policies in community building, education, data management, and protection of intellectual rights. So, pilot on minority heritage has been carried on under the coordination of the University of Budapest, and its case study was focused on the largest transnational minority group in Europe for cultural heritage of Roma communities based in Hungary. The institutional heritage pilot was led by SPK Museum Foundation of Berlin, focusing on the experiences faced by a group of German museums. The pilot investigated the difficulties to engage citizens in institutional cultural heritage and identified successful participatory practices. The small town pilot was carried out under the coordination of Charles University, and its case study focused on the identification of the tangible and intangible heritage of local communities and small towns of the Czech Republic. Our last pilot is the rural heritage, led by the University of Granada, and was totally focused on the recovery and preservation of rural communities and landscape of Sierra Nevada. So, here we are on our online presence. During its time life, the REACH project intensified work for setup and maintaining a strong and active online presence. This was reached by the implementation and periodical updates of the project website, a very live blog, and the use of social media. But a main legacy of the REACH project is Open Heritage, a permanent independent digital platform open to the contributions from all its users, partners, associate partners, and general visitors. The platform offers a vast repository of good practices related to the social participation in cultural heritage, implemented with the contributions of the project partners and experiences collected by other projects that joined the REACH community. Moreover, it gives free access to policy and research section, including academic papers, articles, dissemination materials on the topic of participation in cultural heritage. This platform is conceived to continue to work also after the time life of the project. So I come to the conclusion. During its time life, the REACH project gathered a wide collection of participatory practices in cultural heritage, using both the experiences produced in the framework of its pilot and the knowledge and investigations developed by other projects and professionals. The result of the pilot experiences, together with the development of participatory models, helped to define a resilient European cultural heritage, able to survive to social challenges and cultural transformation. The REACH project produced Open Heritage, as I said before, the permanent digital participatory platform, and last but not least, we'll say that REACH project addressed the challenge to establish a permanent and lasting cluster of actors involved in the field of cultural heritage management and innovation, with the goal to coordinate research in such field. And finally, I would like to leave you with the invitation to participate to the REACH Digital Gallery, Designing Participation for Cultural Heritage, with a poster or a video on the topics of participation and resilience and digitalization products. So thank you for listening to me. I finished, and I hope you enjoyed.
Okay, thank you very much for this presentation. I take a moment to close, or near to close. First of all, I know that Andrea De Polo would like to present, now it's too late really, Membo Sign. He presented also last year, European project, very important. Andrea, if you can say only a few words, not show nothing, because we have no time. We must close in a very, very short time. But if you can repeat in expanded way what you have said also last year in some way, a few words, please, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Vito, and good afternoon, everybody. This is just a very quick update about the NEMSI project. We have seen so far very interesting European project and technologies related to heritage. But the Nemosine project is specifically focusing on the preservation and the conservation of art and old material. How? By using a preventive and a curative approach. So by using specific sensors, the project aims to identify before the degradation occur if the chemical or physical changes are happening inside of these film and preservation boxes. This is a very interesting diagram showing you, for example, how much acetic acid is present in museums. So the vinegar syndrome is a very big problem on cultural heritage institutions. So by using the MOF material, the objective is to absorb and to prevent this chemical reaction inside of these boxes. This is a very quick diagram showing you the interaction, the connection between different work packages in the project. If you are interested to see more about the project, this is the link of the Nemosine project. Now we are in the middle of the project. The project is a 4 years project. And so if you are interested, now the project is building the final boxes before entering into the market. And my work in the project as a cultural heritage expert is to provide the expertise and the feedback from a museum and the restoration point of view on how to design these boxes in the most economically driven approach. Thank you, Vito. Thank you,
Andrea, and we appreciate your short message. Before to close, I ask if some other one like to say short sentence or opinion. And in the meanwhile, I like to thank all our main sponsors. European Commission, we had the one European project on EVAN, European EVAN network. The University of Florence, we represented me and Enrico Del Re. The Council, Tuscany region, we are here. The Municipality of Florence. The Cassa Risparmio Firenze Foundation, Department of Electronic Engineering, Information Engineering, and I like to thank a lot our enterprise. First, we had this morning CISA. CISA company is very large, as you have understood, near 3,000 people, 3 million. But we have also Giunti. Giunti Editore is the largest editor in Italy, really very big in Florence. TT Tecnosistemi in Prato is a very large information technology enterprise. TT Tecnosistemi. PowerSoft is doing a beautiful, unbelievable amplifier, but also robotic system for vision. Euroclays, where I participate in innovation to measure innovation, is very new approach with a big software developed in last times for really Europe and the world. And finally, Centrica Neumus, Sipalpenco, we had the paper Vititras Virtu Italy in 3D. In addition, it's very beautiful to remember the musical conservatory in Florence, Cherubini, the International Center ICSP, and the National UNESCO Museum in Italy. Now, if you have some comments in the world, because we are connected to all the world, please, you can say a few words now. Yeah, some comment, any comment? Unfortunately, we don't have an open access book this year, but what I suggest to anyone, the program is in all the world. The program of this video conference is on our web in the university, is on the web of the council here. So the program contains all the titles of the papers. What I suggest to interested people to have, for instance, the paper of Andrea De Polo, I like just to see now, or of just this morning presentation, very beautiful, by Professor Cantoni. Just you can write directly to them. You find easily the in part is available already, but you can find easily the email, or you ask me, and I am like a connection link, and the author will decide, but I am sure will send you the paper you like. Paper in the form presented today, or eventually also more extended. I give you one example. For instance, in the first paper by Jonathan Bowen, he presented me a 30-page paper. I was obliged to reduce to 80 pages. So in some cases, you can have a very, very long contribution. So it's not an open access, but it's a way to be informed in detail about any paper. So in conclusion, I am happy that we did this experiment. Any year we have a brainstorm. Eva is a brainstorm, Eva Florence. All Eva is a brainstorm, but Eva Florence is a sure brainstorm. We had this year a super brainstorm with experimental work in the video conference because we were not expert. I thank a lot Alessandro Nozzoli, my cooperator, was excellent. The cooperator by Council, Tuscany Region Council, were excellent, but it was a new experiment. Anyway, we plan to conclude to have in real form in a few months, we hope, one real meeting in Florence of all the organizers of EVA in the world. There are about 10 people minimum, 10 main organizers in London, Berlin, and so on, with the goal to create like a consortium. We are already a free consortium. We are international EVA network. This coordination, anyway, we had one European project, can give to us more credibility or more power, but it could be for all and also for all the nation, one new instrument, in some way new, because not so many people know what is EVA and the EVA International Network, a new instrument to go science and art, culture and technology together. So thank you to all, and I am happy that we did this new experiment. I hope to see you before next year in the special meeting for organizing International EVA Network. Thank you to Enrico Del Re, to all our cooperators. They were excellent, and Enrico was a wonderful co-chairman. Thank you very much.
Everyone. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, bye, bye. Bye all.
Bye.
Again.
Ciao.
Thank you a lot. Thank you. And to Jim. Thank to Jim. Thank to Jim. Jim, I
Nice to
thought
see
many
you,
times.
Jim, again.
Ciao, Antonella. Ciao, 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 ciao. 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 Ciao.
Well done, Vito.
No, vieni qua un momento. No, vieni un secondo, dai, vieni un secondo.
Thank you, Vito.
Bye, ciao.
Thank you very much.
Bye to
Ciao.
everyone.
Bye.